Here's how practice will roll out over the next hour. We get 45 minutes in which all cars are out on track, then a 5-minute break, then 10 minutes for 2 groups, the entire field split into 2, just to allow them a bit of space on track to practice their qualifying runs. Those groups divided by pit box selection. That noise could mean only one thing. Green flag here at the Thermal Club. Free practice 1 is underway here on FS1. And pretty much everybody, Townsend and James, out on track immediately to just get a feeling for this circuit. Of course, the first time that they will be driving here for most of them with the new hybrid power unit in the back of the car.
Yeah, now several of these cars could go out straight back in for an install lap, but it's not too early to start getting a read on balance, just like we talked about before the break, especially as you come here to turn 7 off the long back straightaway. You go to a sequence of left, right, left. You spend about 20 seconds laterally loaded through these corners, and it's a lot like oval racing. You know right away, James, as a driver, did we roll off good or do we have some work to do?
Yeah. And Malukas has already had a little bit of a moment, apparently. Let's take a look back at what happened here. This is turn 6, I believe. Just a little bit too much curb. And imagine you're the car following that. That's the thing about this place. Just dropping a wheel, you can throw dust on the racetrack to the car behind. You can send up a smoke screen. It's tough to kind of see through that stuff.
And a big benefit to drivers that might have sat for a few minutes and watched on their screens that the teams will drop into them on pit lane to just see what it's like offline. Now on board the XPEL Chevy with Scott McLaughlin. This is a fun section. Let's lay out and just listen.
Oh, there's still a jump there. McLaughlin with the second fastest time as it stands so far, a 1:42.9224, your fastest man so far today. Christian Lundgaard in the McLaren, 1:42.673. Santino Ferrucci in the AJ Foyt car. Sexton Properties number 14 currently sits 14th in the championship after St. Pete. Tricky weekend for the AJ Foyt team, Hinch. It was not what either of them really wanted out of their first weekend of the season.
No, it wasn't. It's a little bit surprising. They came into the season with a lot of hope and certainly more expectation than they did a year ago, because this guy here, Santino Ferrucci, did an absolutely brilliant job last year bringing this team. It's one of the smaller teams, one of the less funded teams, but got this into the top 10 in points. Not an easy thing to do in the IndyCar Series. We talked about that technical partnership with Team Penske, so they do share data, they share setups. You brought in the young phenom and David Malukas, and there was a lot of hype going into it, but it really didn't click in St. Pete for one reason or another, and they're definitely looking to kind of really kickstart their season here this weekend.
Oh, and we've got Schwartzman with an issue in the Prema. That'll be a red flag immediately as Schwartzman jumps out of the car, and massive disappointment for a Prema team that is new to the series. They tested here, and there's a fire at the rear of the car.
Certainly is.
Out by Hinch.
And it was radio issues at St. Pete, and now powertrain. And we understand that he was complaining of low oil pressure in the cockpit as he quickly directs the AMR safety team, always on the scene right away, and they'll look to extinguish those flames quickly.
Ryan Briscoe watches on. Of course, so much experience in this championship there as an advisor, the sporting director of the team. Not the start to the thermal weekend that Prema would have wanted. Not good scenes for Prema and the 83 of Robert Schwartzman, still out there on track and finding it difficult to contain the flames.
By the way, how awesome is our drone? Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, we've never had this, to be able to get such a great perspective on the urgency with which the AMR safety team is ripping off. Look at how badly burned the top of the engine cover is. When we went to break, it was a seemingly innocent fire at the back of the car that needed to be extinguished, but obviously it's traveled and become a much bigger problem, and such a disastrous way to start the second practice one of the season when they had so many issues at St. Pete.
And he had to make a very quick exit from the car. What was the cause of the heat and the fire?
Well, one of the idea is that the fuel tube has been detached in the car and it just went on the exhaust pipe and obviously go on fire. That's one of the options. Then obviously the worst case scenario is something happened to engine. But I really hope that that's not the engine case, because we're quite limited throughout the season with the engine. So I really just hope that it's just one side of the car that just got a bit burned. But yeah, I mean, from my side, from the cockpit, it was like I was driving and then I immediately lost power. And then I had a fuel alarm popped up and I was like, okay, something is wrong. And then all of a sudden the car restarted, like it just brought back the engine power. And I was like, okay, maybe everything is fine. And I started just going slowly, taking it easy. And then at some point I just heard like a big like hit, like pop, like little like hit on the back, and then immediately I felt like the seat was getting hit up, and I looked in the mirror and I was like, there's smoke and fire coming. So I was like, okay, I need immediately to stop the car. So I stopped the car, jumped out, and yeah, I mean, from the outside it didn't look that bad. At least the fire was not massive, and that was good that the guys were really quick to operate to save the car. So I really hope that it's not big damage and that we can rebuild the car for tomorrow.
Here we go. There's that bump.
The 60.
Rosenquist.
And we saw, I believe, oh, he kept it going, but man, that was a rough ride.
That bump is still there.
And this comes after, I'm told, Rosenquist had 2 crashes at the most recent test at Barber Motorsports Park, one of which saw him inverted up on top of the barriers, as you get another great view of almost look like a shuttle launch, the way the dust collects and clouds up behind him.
Cambridge on board, pictures of Colton Herta getting some laps in. He was one of the drivers that had an interesting strategy last year in this race, trying to save the tires driving around at the back to a lap time. Excited at the prospect of just going flat out here this year.
And with this Cambridge on board, the Andrettis are starting to push, folks. Herta giving it maximum commitment. His 2 teammates, Kirkwood and Ericsson, have just gone to the top of the pile. Ericsson first with a 1:42.2, then Kirkwood deposing him with a 1:41.8, our first lap in the 1:41s. This team, of course, who tested here earlier on in the preseason.
Now remember, when the clock runs out, we're going to split the groups into 2 odds and evens. Everyone's going to get 10 minutes. That's just to give a little more space on the racetrack for drivers as they throw on those red sidewalled alternate Firestone tires. That's the softer tire, kind of getting a little bit of a practice for qualifying in. Here's that long turn 9, Townsend.
Yeah, this is hustle time right here for Colton Herta. Full send. Let's watch.
And you can just see how easy it is to get behind the corner. If you make a little mistake in one of those, it just has this domino effect, this snowball effect, and you bleed lap time through that section.
Can I just say, if we get a shot of the outside of this car,
yeah,
I think gorgeous. Inarguably one of the nicest liveries in racing.
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely stunning.
You know, we chatted to Graham a little bit earlier today, and a lot of new personnel on that car, on the 15 stand, over the wall. And he said, look, St. Pete was a good weekend for us. It was a bit of a learning weekend as everybody kind of gets into a groove, learns each other's ways of operating, what makes you tick, and ultimately relatively happy with how the weekend progressed. But progression is what he wants to continue to see as this group gets better and better. Big driver lineup changes here for RLL as a checkered flag has fallen on the all-skate session. We will now...
Tire just doesn't last, man. The one-lap tire is dead.
And that's the hard tire, guys. That's the primary. The black sidewall, only 1 lap.
And I love it because even Graham's laughing like, this is going to be interesting. That's the tone of that smirk, that chuckle in the cockpit is like, wow, this is going to be a handful after 1 lap. And to your point, on the hard compound, what happens when the soft red goes on?
And this is the thing. You remember, folks, a couple of weeks ago in St. Pete, Firestone took the decision to make the alternate, the soft tire, far softer, and it lasted 5-6 laps. Everyone wanted to get rid of it. This weekend, they've gone in the opposite direction. So the alternate tire, the soft tire, that is just a shade softer than last year's primary tire. The primary tire has been made to be even more supposedly durable, and yet there we see after 1 lap.
Is that Graham? It is the 15, and look at how chewed up the tread is so quickly. Gets me excited, guys, for race day.
Oh my goodness! I mean, we were talking earlier today to some of the guys. They were like, "Yeah, I think it might be a 3-stopper." We spoke to Connor Daly. He said, I reckon it's a 4-stopper.
I reckon he might be right.
He might be the guy
we'll be
to try
looking for is how much time is lost on pit lane. That's a number we'll have by race day because the pit lane's been extended here. We'll get some data from the teams after this, but that will factor 3 or 4 stops. Well, if you can go faster on new tires, you still pay the penalty with time on pit lane. But if the math works, they'll go 4 stops to the end.
Ground down, but it still feels rough when you're driving over 17 there.
It was described as smooth as silk now.
Yes.
Until this session, and it's anything but. That's going to be pretty exciting as we get closer to qualifying. But let's take a look at Christian Lundgaard hitting that bump in slow motion. Look at the floor and watch it bang right there.
You still get the full air underneath the car as we see Rosenqvist maybe having another little issue here. Just locking up, going completely wide there, the back half of the track. Down there at 14.
Felix Rosenqvist, the fastest driver out there at the moment. 0.03 of a second faster than Will Power. Hinch, Townsend, take us through it.
Well, look, let's take a look at what 0.03 looks like at the end of the lap. You see the start of the lap, Will Power does have about that car length advantage over Felix Rosenqvist. Felix great on the brakes here down into that first corner. But we've talked about this a lot. It's about making sure that the tires last the whole lap with how soft they are and how fast they are wearing and losing that lap time. Will into 2 and 3. Deep in the brakes. Rosie gets him back a little bit mid-corner. Now you're heading in to the chicane. That is 4 and 5.
And this is where Rosenqvist starts to make up a little bit of ground here at the exit of 5, and then they come to turn 6 and go to the long back straightaway. It's Rosenqvist ahead, but watch Will Power and Chevrolet. Again, Rosenqvist in a Honda. Man, look at the top speed here, 165, now 170 as Power starts to claw back that deficit on the straightaway. Tires don't matter on the straight. It's all down to horsepower.
And now you go into these long duration corners that we talked about at the top of the show are so critical for a setup. Power getting the advantage on the entry part there of turn 8, now through the long turn 9 and running down this back straight into this S's section. Let's see who has the grip through the S's here. It's still Power by a chunk, but then Rosenqvist
makes a mistake.
He makes a little mistake. And we talked about it. If you get it wrong in one of them, it just carries for the rest of the lap. Good power down out of the 60 of Rosenqvist and across the line.
About 0.03 of a second. That's what it looks like at the line. It's about 2 to 3 feet after 3.1 miles.
Let's take a little listen to what's happening with Graham Rahal, RLL.
Tire's destroyed. I feel like I cannot touch a curb. If I touch a curb, the bottom locks. Like I cannot push this car. Too easy to tip it over.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun from inside the cockpit of Graham Rahal's car. Certainly saying he can't touch the curbs. It's upsetting the car. It's bottoming. It's
3 seconds off the pace.
That's not where you want to be. That's what is so crazy. I mean, you don't hear those numbers in IndyCar.
Because that is the current state of his car. Kevin Lee, what can you tell us about what you're seeing down there?
Well, it's going to be a long night for the men and women with the Prema team because the fire damage was too extensive. The belts were essentially melted. So this was a brand new chassis. So they're getting all the components that can be moved over, but it's going to be a fresh engine. And they've got another brand new Dallara chassis here. And they'll be here pretty much all night getting prepared. Essentially, Robert Schwartzman, the rookie, cannot catch a break right now. He just needs track time.
You said it. You said it.
Like this, and back on track, it's pretty impressive too. That's Pato O'Ward on the outside of Christian Rasmussen trying to just get that track position. Christian obviously trying to take care of the tires. Let's see what Pato saw for all this. You see, Pato actually, he's on the hards. He's not on the soft, so that's why he's...
Who says you can't pass here?
I promise you won't be able to pull that move off in the race.
And then Scott McLaughlin, who had the pole in St. Pete. but currently 6th fastest on a 1:40.9 in the Expel Penske. So it is Palou, the fastest driver today, a 1:40.548, wouldn't you know it. The reigning champion, the man who won first time out in St. Pete, the man they all have to beat.